happening in these times when so much of these slave economies were led by men. What were the white women doing? They would have been impacted by patriarchy, no access to property, no access to wealth unless they married, very few rights. Then I discovered that enslaved people were their access to property. So many of the white women in the Caribbean, what was known as the British Caribbean then, they were led by the white women, and they enacted some of the most horrific violence on enslaved people. That is unbelievably horrific to read. And this is in historical record, but we don't hear about that because we're told we need to come together in solidarity. And I get that to an extent, but also we need to reckon with our past. Right. And like, what were the women doing in these leadership roles that were replicating patriarchy? I don't think the world will suddenly have this seismic shift just because there's more women leading, because we have also been indoctrinated with misogyny and patriarchy and, misogynoir. And unless we're looking at that and understanding how it's affecting our behaviour, how we parent, the expectations we have of other women in leadership role, the lack of trust, the undermining, all of those things, we've got to look at it all.
Hello and a very warm welcome. We are kicking season 7 of Why Care with a bang. And I do love to kick off these seasons with a particularly special guest. So you can imagine how excited I was when Nova Reid said yes to joining me for episode 61 of Why Care. She sits and her work sits at the intersection of storytelling, mental health and social justice. Nova has earned multiple accolades for over a decade of work in racial justice, guiding international organisations and individuals through the internal work required for systemic change, and advised on prominent human rights inquiries. Her experience working as a former professional actress makes her an absolutely superb orator, and as a result she's regularly commanded world-class stages from the National Theatre to the House of Commons. From the award-winning inception of New Bride to the global impact of her TED Talk, Not All Superheroes Wear Capes, and her best-selling debut book, The Good Ally, Nova's creative lens bridges the gap between our difficult histories and our collective potential. Whether she's writing for major publications like The Guardian, Vogue, Elle, or producing projects that tell untold stories, such as her Audible podcast, Hidden Histories, Nova cares deeply about healing, and her voice is a consistent force for humanity. Welcome, Nova Reid to Why Care.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm bubbling because you are one special woman. And we came across each other from an Adorium lunch, which is a membership organisation we're part of, and just happened to be placed next to each other. I think actually it was organised that way because they're like, oh, Nova, Nadia, you should meet. And my eyes lit up as soon as I put 2 and 2 together, the Nova Reid, whose book was sitting on my bookshelf at home. So I want to talk to you about so many things, but I want to start with this word which is worthy, okay? And I know, and we're going to talk very much about your debut one-woman show that you've got coming up on the 23rd of June, 2026 in London. We are going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk about the actual word, the meaning of the word worthy, because dictionary definition, to be deserving of respect, okay? And you've chosen worthy to be the title of your debut one-woman show. So it obviously means something to you, deserving of respect. Can you unpack a little bit that word? What does it mean?
We're not warming up, are we?
No, I was straight in there.
Straight in. I learned unworthiness before I learned what it was to be worthy. And something that I speak about is a lot that my work to live, work, practice worthiness will be work that I have to do until the day that I die. And I say that for many reasons. I say that as a Black woman who has lineages lost to slavery, whose the legacy of that means that so many women and so many Black women tie their worth to what they produce and what they create, what they do, how they are, rather than who they are, and just, inherently being enough as you are, not because you've done something or because you've achieved something. So it has thick, long roots intergenerationally, interpersonally. And I think if you move through the world on a ground of stable sense of worth, or I should say a healthy sense of worth and a healthy sense of self-esteem, I don't think we'd be seeing the amount of human rights infringements and harms that are seen at a global scale. I think it's an important piece of work that all of us have to do to build healthy self-esteem and to practice worthiness.
It feels like this is, and I get it, you'll be practicing it and until the day you die, because there's so many messages from the world around us that could quite easily, if we paid attention to them and if we chose to believe them, could chip away at our sense of self-worth, self-esteem.
Yeah, and I would say that sometimes it's not about choice, because children are learning their place in the world very, very young. Children start learning nonverbal cues as young as 7 months old. They start expressing some degree of bias from 3 years old, and then of course they're looking at themselves and where they fit in the world and trying to make sense of it already at such a young age. So as a really, really basic example, if all you're seeing in advertising, in media, on TV, positive representation is somebody who has white skin, blue eyes and blonde hair, and all you see of imagery that looks like you are on charity adverts with young children who are in extreme abject poverty in places in Africa, and you're looking at yourself and you're looking at skin color, then what does that say about, it's communicating something very, very young to children who, of course, can't make any sense of this. So it starts so early.
Yeah. You're reminding me of a conversation I had. I was facilitating a workshop. It was relevant to the conversation, but there was a Black woman who said that I think it was her daughter, or it could have been her niece, when she was asked what the 4-year-old niece, what she wanted for her birthday, she said she'd like to be white.
Yeah.
And everyone just paused, because it was just, I remember the silence on the call. It was on Zoom, this workshop, because it was almost, it just took the air out of us to think that there is even just one young Black girl out there, child out there, who wishes for their birthday to be a different colour, to be white. And that's now. It's not back then. It's now.
Yeah, that says something about the power of social programming. It says a lot about how much work we've got to do to tackle what white supremacy is and how we indoctrinate ideas, behaviour. And, there's a really famous science experiment called the Clark Doll Project.
Yes.
And that project has been done all over the world with children of multiple backgrounds, multiple ages, multiple ethnicities, and it still continues to yield the same results.
Yes. Do you want to just very quickly, I know what you're talking about, do you want to very quickly describe that experiment?
So it's done by Kenneth and Mamie Clark. They are psychologists. They're also a married couple, and they were trying to prove the psychological impact of segregation on the mental health of not just Black children, but all children in America. And that Clark Doll Project was groundbreaking in helping stop segregation. And the experiment has children, I believe, between the ages of 3 and 5, possibly 3 to 7. And there's dolls, and they have dolls with white skin, and they have dolls with Black or darker skin, and of varying degrees of shades of colour. And then they asked the children, what colour is the good doll? And then invariably they would report to the white doll, the doll with the lightest skin. What doll is the bad doll? And they'll point to the doll with the darkest skin. What doll do adults prefer? and then they'll point to the one with the lighter skin. And what doll do adults dislike? They'll point to the doll, and it goes on and on and on. And there is variations of this that will say, well, which doll do you most look like?
Yes.
And then you see the utter devastation for the children who are Black, who are recognizing these things in themselves. And, you know, it starts really early. It's devastating. I saw a variation of that, I don't know how long ago. And I think that was a key driver for some of the work I'm doing now. This racism, this social programming, shame around having tough conversations about race. It is harming the mental health of our children over and over again. And you've just given a great example of how this persists. This
sense of worth then, and you say, you know, something you're working on and you continue to work on. How do you work on it? What is it what do you do for yourself?
I do many things. I started my training, I don't even remember how, a good 2 decades ago now, in mental health. And I started with counselling skills training. So I was learning to be a therapist to support young people. And it became very apparent. And I was also I was noticing that the other people who were studying to be therapists were a lot older than me. And it became apparent that I needed to go through my own therapy in order to be able to hold people. Like, to me it was very clear that it would be unsafe, unethical, and some degree of tantamount to malpractice if I wasn't looking at myself. And also, just in hearing some of their stories, it would remind me of things as like, or memories that I'd forgotten about. I was, there's some things there that need attention or curiosity. So I am an advocate for anything that requires us to look at self, deeper understand self, understand our triggers, understand trauma. My work is trauma-informed. I think it's vital. I think I wish more people had access to some kind of well-being as like an MOT, like we would do with our cars.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm fascinated by human behaviour, always have been. And so that also includes my own.
Yeah.
And so because I think I have that background of self-inquiry, self-interrogation, curiosity, it's just always been there. And many of the root of what I was working on in therapy, or what was, you know, commanding my attention, was around unworthiness and around some of the messaging that I got as a young Black girl, around my sense of worth because of the colour of my skin. Like, it was so implicit, like nobody ever said anything to me that was explicit, but it was everywhere. It was in the lack of dolls that looked like me. And then, you know, as I got older, it became more, you know, the racism in my experience became more explicit. Or maybe it was explicit when I was younger, I just didn't understand it, right?
Yeah,
that's the fair.
Yeah.
So it's always been, I just know it's always been a part of my work, and it always will be.
Do you grow up in quite a white demographic area in Hertfordshire? Is it Hertfordshire?
Yes.
Okay. So, and you've touched a little bit about you as a little Nova. So I'd love to just explore that a little bit with you. So you were predominantly in a white school in a white neighbourhood. What were some of the signals that you got to suggest that, I don't know, you were lesser?
I remember recounting this with in another interview a few years back. And when I was recounting it, he said, wow, you've had some really explicit racism. And I was like, So even I was questioning it, because to me it was like, well, I've never been spat at. So,
no, me neither. Yeah.
But it was, as I was growing older, there'd be white men in vans doing monkey chants at me. Fascist flags were a common thing when I was growing up. So seeing them again now is interesting. Having those flags waved at me, the St. George's, the Union Jack, there ain't no black in the Union Jack, telling me to go back to my own country and blah, blah, all of that unoriginal stuff. And then I think a defining moment that I share about in my TED Talk was when I was just walking to school one morning, and a young girl on the other side of the street, and I wouldn't have been more than about 7, pointed at me and asked her mother why I was the same colour as Pooh. And it was less about the humiliation of that moment and more how her mother responded to her, and how she shushed her and pulled her away from me like I was contagious. There was no there was no engagement with the child. We were both children. There was no engagement with either of us. There was no care, and there was no, oh no, honey, you know, that's not very nice. Or, you know, working with the young person to have a different perception of what
a dialogue,
you know, a more positive perception of what brown is. Like, it was so interesting to me that the thing that came out of her mouth was poo, rather than the earth, or rather than, I don't know,
chocolate.
A nice chocolate.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
She's chosen something dirty.
Yeah. So where
and
is that?
Learned.
Yes, the association, word association, colour, Yeah.
And so I remember that. I recount it in my TED Talk. So,
and it stays with you. And did you feel that you were able to respond to that, or to any of the other things that may have happened to you at that young age?
I was 7 years old, so no, of course not. The other ones are always fleeting, like they catch you off guard. They're quite disarming in the moment, which can leave you in a kind of freeze state.
Yes.
And again, I was younger. I would have been in my teens, and they're grown adults. So they're very, like, it was so unsafe in that respect. And so I think aspects of the work that I do now, you know, I had a friend say to me recently that I am very skilled at calling out racism and holding people accountable for their racism in ways that she's inspired and wants to learn, because they still find it quite destabilizing. And it can at times still destabilize me, but I think the way I use my voice now is something, there's something reparative in it. I'm using it in this way for all the times that I couldn't before.
Because that's what I suppose that's where my question is coming from, is that you've learned at somewhere along the way, you learned to go, no,
it's unacceptable.
So where do you know when that point was?
I don't know when that point was. I mean, we're talking specifically about race, but I'm a survivor of sexual abuse from a young age. And so there's been many, many moments in my life where I've been taken advantage of and had my childhood robbed. And so there were so many times that I was silenced. And so I do think that, you know, in my healing work and in my growth, there's a lot of work I'm doing to heal my inner child who wasn't listened to or couldn't speak. So that, again, is my work. I also, as I mentioned before, I come from lineages lost to slavery, and that, you know, enslaved African women had no autonomy over their bodies, over their words, over their ideas, over their voices. And so I honestly think that this is my lineage's healing work. And I'm here to speak. I'm here to speak the truth. It doesn't make me popular. It's the work. So I wouldn't say there was a moment. I'd say there's just been work that has helped me feel more grounded in who I am. And also to know that these things are happening to me, not because there's something inherently wrong with me, but because people are doing really shitty things. So that was a defining moment, not internalizing everything as it happening to me because I'm bad, it happening to me because I'm black, it happening to me because I deserve it, it happening to me because I'm not good enough. Like, those messages were sometimes implicit. And so everything in my being undermines that now. And I remember a friend of mine, Kim Oliver, who runs an organisation called Our Living Archives, documenting the stories of black, queer and disabled women and femmes. And something had happened. There's always stuff happening. Something had happened where I lost my rag. And I don't lose my temper often, but I lost my rag.
Oh.
And I was recounting the story, and she said, Nova, how do you have such a strong sense of what it is that you deserve? And I was like, let me backtrack and think about that, because I'm not sure that I can answer. Like, everything in my gut knows when something is unjust and unfair. And if I feel grounded enough and safe enough, then invariably I'll do something about it.
And I love that about you. I'm wondering as you're speaking how your parents might have responded to you using your voice in the way that you use your voice and developed to use your voice, because there's something for my parents. I'm just thinking of my own personal circumstances. I know, because the other day there was the Together Alliance march in London, and I desperately wanted to go. I just couldn't get childcare sorted, sadly. And I remember telling my mum, and I was like, "Oh, it's happening now. I really want to." She was like, "Oh no, I mean, you best stay away from that, just because it could get out of." There's all from a safety perspective. She was like, she didn't want me to be in that space. She's not like she didn't believe in the cause, just that she wanted me to keep safe. And you already spoken about, obviously, there's risk in the work in using your voice in the way that you do. How, as a young Black girl, and the messages you were getting about how to be, how to behave, and into the woman you've become, I'm imagining that there's some disparity in terms of what your parents might have told you.
What makes you say that? Just a guess. Yes. Again, it comes from their want for my safety. They would both prefer if I did not do the work that I do.
Okay.
And to an extent, my husband as well. He understands it. He understands the mission, and but there's risk. You know, I was at an event last year, and there was an incident. It was an anti-racism event, and there was an incident where there was harm that was happening in real time, verbal harm, and not a single person in the space intercepted other than me. And so when I sort of, dealt with that, and then we're having my own, I would say, trauma response to it, and speaking to him about what happened, he was furious, and he worries about that, especially in this climate. And also my parents, my mum specifically, my grandparents came to England from Jamaica as part of the Windrush generation, or generations that followed. My mum came from Jamaica on a plane when she was 7 years old. And so the messaging that my parents and my grandparents got when coming to England was, you assimilate. Don't put your head above the parapet, work hard, keep your head down, don't talk back. And so I'm doing everything that possibly undermines that.
Yeah.
And so it's, I think it scares them. Yeah.
There's something, that assimilation, there's so much they want, certainly from my parents' perspective, they wanted me to fit in. They wanted me to belong. They wanted me, just to not be bullied, not be picked on. For who I was, who I am. So I'm talking about sort of when I was a little girl. And I did so much to try and fit in. I worked so hard to be that good girl and, learn how to navigate this world that, living in the UK, living in sort of South London, it wasn't necessarily made for me. And interestingly, when I went to Mauritius as a little girl, I didn't feel like I still needed to assimilate there too, because it was obvious from a mile away that I wasn't grown. Even though I look Mauritian, I still didn't fit in there. And so there was this part of me that was always trying to fit in, and it's quite exhausting, to be honest.
It's very exhausting.
And so this sort of concept of assimilating and fitting in, how do you know? Because I struggle with this sort of, how do I know now what's me? And because I choose to do something because it matters to me and it makes me feel good, versus what I've been taught to say, do, respond in order to fit. I don't know where the line is. It's such a blurry line. So how do you navigate this line between doing what you think is right versus assimilating to what the society expects of you?
I'll reframe it in terms of what I think is right versus being the good girl or being the good person or being the good one. Because I think the exhaustion is a good cue for you. If you're doing something and as a result of doing that thing, you're constantly left at a deficit, I would say that's probably happening because you're people pleasing. I heard someone describe people pleasing as manipulation once. I was like, oh. and for many reasons, many really valuable, like understandable reasons, I understand the behaviour. For some, it's a trauma response. For some, it's around keeping safe. You know, if you can control and manipulate an outcome, you can make sure that as best you can that you stay safe. And there's many explanations that make sense.
Yeah.
And also, if you're doing something because you're trying to control an outcome or control your perception, then it's not something that's coming from internal. It's something that is happening externally to you that you are trying to control.
Yeah.
Different energy.
Do you still catch yourself now trying to fit into that good girl people pleasing?
Not trying to fit in. I think my thing is overgiving. I like giving.
Yes.
It's my love language.
Yes.
And there are times when I will overgive to my deficit. And there's an aspect of that maybe is around pleasing that type behaviours for sure. But that I think is the thing I need to catch. It leaves me at a deficit. I also think when we overgive and we overdo, again, that also ties to worthiness, which is the core wound. And, you know, worthiness been tied to productivities. Those are things that are bigger triggered for me. If I overgive and I overdo at my deficit, what that then ends up doing is infantilizing some of the adults or loved ones or people you have around you, and stops them from actually developing skills and tools to be able to advocate, self-advocate, do things for themselves, ask for help, ask for what they need, because I'm busy anticipating the need.
Yeah.
So there's something quite disabling about that when we do it. What we think is good, we have to catch when we're doing that and disabling people out of their own experience of growth and learning.
And for some people, it could be quite they're just in it. They're not aware of what they're producing. They're not aware of this cycle, right?
Yeah. And often it's because there's always something underneath the cycle. There's always a current underneath. If we can tend to what that current underneath is, I'm feeling insecure. Oh, I'm feeling unsafe. What is it about this environment or this situation that's making me feel unsafe? Is this present or is this old? Is this something historical that needs attention? And whatever I'm rubbing up against with this individual is becoming a mirror for me. So much self-awareness. But when you can develop that discernment, it changes everything. And sometimes you don't recognize it in the moment until after. It's like, and then it's about, okay, that's a painful lesson I needed to learn in order to move forward.
Yeah. I don't know how deep people need to go in order to be able to explore historically in their past, sort of in their lineage. You talk about lineage, right? And for you, it's a lineage of slavery. And for other people, their ancestral history would lead them somewhere else. I think it's quite unusual. Maybe it's not, but I feel like it's very rare that people will go that deep into their history to understand how the past informs their present.
I mean, I go that deep because I'm just curious. I'm like, there's so much wisdom in the past. There's so many learning lessons, discoveries to help us deeper understand who we are. And I'm like, if we don't know who we are and where we came from, like, where are we going? Where are we going? We just continue to repeat past harms, and we're seeing this play out in real time on a global scale. So I think it's important. I think our capacity to be able to do that depends on our own window of tolerance, depends on whether we've engaged in any kind of therapeutic work before. Like I wouldn't have been able to do it to the depths that I do it now 2 decades ago. Everything in its time. I talk about therapy. I do a lot around spirituality. I'm in a lot of Buddhist spaces. I try when I'm disciplined. I sit 3 times a week in community. Sometimes half a day on a Saturday.
What do you mean you sit in community?
Sit as in meditating. Yeah,
for half a day.
Half a day. We do a half-day sit. So we'll sit, literally sitting. No music, no talking, silence. And that's a way to really be with self. So there are other things, somatic work, understanding, like I'm very feeling, I'm very sensing. So sometimes if something's off and nothing outwardly has happened or nobody said anything, but energetically something is off, what I'm trying to do now is learn to trust that more, as somebody who's very, very feeling, as something legitimate to gauge safety or whether or not to engage in an interaction or not, rather than talking myself out of it because nothing outwardly has happened and then the harm happens later on and it's very vile or violent. So, like our bodies are very, very wise if we listen to them. We've learned from a young age, we're quite disembodied in the UK. We've learned from a young age to ignore our own basic needs. We're told as children when to go to the bathroom at school in breaks. So we learn to undermine our own body cues at a really long age. So part of me developing this has also been about listening to my body.
You mentioned very briefly just then around this connection with what's going on in today's current world. So just to bring back to that, because it feels like there's something around this lineage of slavery that you speak about, around this complicated history that people of a Black background have with Britain, living in Britain. And you're all about telling untold stories. Not all about, but that's a lot of what you do is storytelling and finding those untold stories, like in your Audible podcast, Hidden Histories. So I'm fascinated about what you've learned from delving into these untold stories, in thinking and exploring the lineage of slavery and the relationship of Black people to Britain. Can you speak a little bit to, and maybe unpack, what's happening in today's current world? How does it relate?
I'm laughing because there's a lot of shit happening.
It's a big question, I appreciate.
I will start with, when I started writing my book, The Good Ally, what I was surprised about was how much of my own personal story. So I would say it's a little bit, it's narrative nonfiction, and there's a little bit of memoir in there that I didn't expect to come through.
Okay.
But it did. And I'm like, there's no way I can write as a subject expert without talking about my own experiences as somebody who's not immune to any of this stuff. And so there were a number of memories that had come to the surface that I'd forgotten about. There were historical figures that I'd found in my research for The Good Ally that was like, whoa, who is this? And I want to learn more about her, or, oh, I knew about her, but I did not know this story. And I felt like I wanted to know more. So after I'd written The Good Ally, I had all of this research of all of these formidable African women who've been extraordinary pioneers in so many things, from medicine to spirituality to, you know, Queen Nanny of the Maroons and this powerhouse of a matriarch, and leading the Maroons to defeat the British long before slavery was abolished in Jamaica. And I'm like, why are we not hearing about these queens? And like, yes, you mentioned some of my lineages that I speak about are those that are lost to slavery, but there were many lineages that existed long before that of these empires that were ruled by women. And I want to learn more about that. And so I started by looking at African women who ended up in Jamaica. And Queen Nanny's story is one that fascinates me because even when we were researching for Hidden Histories, so much of the history, you know, is kept by the conqueror, right? And so there's many archives that are completely erased, not there to begin with, or you get a half-assed story or an incomplete truth. And many of the stories, from my background, I'm a storyteller. I come from lineages of griots and storytellers. And so a lot of the history is kept orally. So it gets passed down from generation to generation. Of course, as a result of that, you get these slight variations with what happens. But so when we were researching Hidden Histories, we were led to believe that Queen Nanny of the Maroons was captured from what we now know as Ghana, and ended up on a slave ship. She ended up on a slave ship because, of course, there's all of these loved ones and human beings who had lives and careers and were in community that were suddenly going missing because they were being kidnapped, right? And trafficked to the Caribbean and the Americas. And so there were people in West Africa thinking, where are they going? Like, what's happening? I'm going to find out. So she put herself on that ship to rescue her people.
Wow.
And that maroon community still exists. There's several maroon communities. There's 4 of them, I believe, in Jamaica, and there are in other countries as well. It still exists today, and they are governed by their own laws that were embedded and instilled by the work that Queen Nanny of the Maroons did to this very day. That's fascinating to me.
It is just incredible. It makes me, when you're telling this story, I'm thinking, well, what happened in the world that means now that women leadership is looked down upon, that it is seen as a weakness if you show female traits of leadership. And yet this is just one of many stories that you have of these powerful, incredible women leaders. So what happened along the way? Why is it that women leaders, we don't see them around? Where are they in the world, in our world politics today?
We have major systemic issues that are intertwined and overlap. The legacy of patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism go hand in hand. And, one of the things I talk about in The Good Ally is, I'm curious. I'm very curious. And I was like, what was happening in these times when so much of these slave economies were led by men? And I'm like, what were the white women doing? I was like, I'm really keen because they would have been impacted by patriarchy, no access to property, no access to wealth unless they marry, very few rights, discrimination left, right and centre. So I'm like, what were the women doing? And then I discovered that enslaved people were their access to property. So many of the white women in the Caribbean, what was known as the British Caribbean then, they were led by the white women, and they enacted some of the most horrific violence on enslaved people. That is unbelievably horrific to read. And this is in historical record, but we don't hear about that because we're told we need to come together in solidarity. Yeah. And I get that to an extent, but also we need to reckon with our past.
Right.
What were the women doing in these leadership roles that were replicating patriarchy? And so I think that's an important thing as well. I don't think the world will suddenly have this seismic shift just because there's more women leading, because we have also been indoctrinated with misogyny and patriarchy and, misogynoir. And unless we're looking at that and understanding how it's affecting our behaviour, how we parent, the expectations we have of other women in leadership role, the lack of trust, the undermining, all of those things, we've got to look at it all.
Yeah. People will deliberately have completely different conversations other than that one.
Yeah, because it's uncomfortable, but I'm like, I don't know how we move forward in any meaningful way without discomfort, as best, conflict. Like the only way is through.
If your organisation marks inclusion moments with a newsletter or a one-way panel event, there's a better way. Why Care Live brings a professionally produced live podcast experience inside your organisation with a high-profile guest, real employee questions, and the kind of honest conversation that actually widens perspectives and creates shifts in behaviour and culture. Your employees get to ask what they really want to know in a psychologically safe space. And you walk away with more than a good event. You get a professionally edited podcast episode branded in partnership with your organisation, short-form content for internal comms, and a full recording your teams can use long after the event itself. Because of you, Why Care has so far reached over 27,000 viewers and listeners across YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you for following and all your positive words about the show. If you're a chief people officer, head of culture and inclusion, or leading a staff network, find out how to bring Why Care live to your organisation. Limited partnerships are available in the year. Book a call with me at avenirconsultingservices.com or drop me a message at hello@avenirconsultingservices.com. You've got a production company.
Yes.
Redemption. It's very new. I'm interested in these stories that you've delved into the history. You're curious. You're wanting to tell more stories. Is that the aim of your production company, to tell more stories, to get deeper into these uncomfortable conversations?
I mean, they're not necessarily uncomfortable. They're just, I'm interested in what the stories that aren't being told, and often the ones that aren't being told often have a lot of substance to them. There's a reason why they're not being told. And so I was listening to, I think it's Simon Squibb, responding to the Manosphere documentary that Louis Theroux fronted on Netflix very recently, that looks at some of the cultures around harmful masculinity and what's going on, how our young boys are being indoctrinated with some of these things. And he made a comment that said, why aren't we telling the story from the perspective of the impact on women? There's so many other stories that can be told about men who aren't behaving like that. And what can we learn from those stories? And I said, we're having a kind of, it was a chat on social media. I said, those stories aren't seen as interesting to the commissioners. Enable and perpetuate the shock factor. And, look how much publicity some of these young men on this program are now getting as a result of being on Netflix. And that compounds the harm. So, yes, I want to tell more untold stories. But there's also something in commissioners needing to see why it's important to put money behind them and tell those stories rather than go for the shock factor. I always go for the shock factor stuff. And I'm always being contacted by commissioners or production companies to what I would say mine me for content. So, we love you. We've seen you on this. What ideas have you got? And I'm like, oh. So there's value in my ideas. Okay. And so there was something really important in terms of the legacies I come from, reclaiming our own stories, retelling them in a way where humanity is honoured. And also for me around like legacy and archiving in a way that's important to me. And so, we haven't spoken about this, but I used to be an actress. And so I've been involved on TV and film back in the day for a while, and the behaviour with production companies back then is still the behaviour that I've experienced with production companies today. It's very driven on deliverables. There's rarely any safeguarding at all, and there's just a lack of care and a lot of carelessness and like high rates of burnout. People are very, very pushed to deliver and pushed to the nth degree in ways that it's harmful, in ways that it's harmed me. And I'm like, there's got to be another way to tell untold stories and deliver them in a way where care is at the centre and not an afterthought. And that's what Redemption will be doing.
I love that. There's this sense of we need content, this whole culture of generating content without any thought to the people in front of the camera, behind the camera, anyone who's involved, and the story that they might be carrying as they offer what they do in front of the camera. I love this concept of redemption. So thank you for the work you're going to do, and just bringing it back to Worthy. Because obviously, as this orator, as this actress, you're going to be on stage. Can you talk more? What was behind this idea of putting on a one-woman show in London and on the West End in June? It's epic. I'm very excited, so excited. Honestly, the thought of doing it myself, I'd just be running in the opposite direction. So tell us more.
Do you know, I was interviewed on on something that was exploring some of the histories of Nanny of the Maroons. And the person interviewing asked me a question. I don't remember what the question was, but my answer was, like, I've always been a storyteller and a creative at heart, always. And I said, I found in my adult life that everything I have produced, from the wedding show to my book to Hidden Histories and other projects, I am often trying to solve a social justice issue. And I use my creativity to do that. And so I said, I often wonder, what would I be creating if my life had not been eclipsed by racism? And so when I was in the acting world, it's a very difficult industry. And I found it really challenging. I found the inconsistency of being in and out of work really tough to my self-esteem and self-worth. And so I left the industry due to that. And I had an injury, and then that was it was a great excuse for me to leave the industry. But you don't lose a love for live theatre like that. You don't lose that light. And I was invited to be on stage at the Bloomsbury Theatre last year to talk about Hidden Histories. And I was in conversation with the wonderful Afua Hirsch, and I was just having the time of my life. I was dancing and I was so comfortable. And that theatre was the very first theatre that I ever performed on as an actress some decades ago.
Oh my gosh.
And so the nostalgia of being back on that stage, I was like, oh yeah, I want to do more. I want to do more. So Worthy is me pushing myself to go back to some of my roots. It will be about me, some of my stories, some of my untold stories. I'll be commenting on some current affairs, and there'll be, live music, and it will be a celebration. It will be raw, honest dialogue. It will be about leadership, woes and wins, and Black womanhood, grief, heartbreak, friendship, losses, anything I decide to talk about. Because often we go through, particularly women in leadership roles, we're seen as together. It's very isolating, and so many people are going through similar things and nobody's talking about it. And so I want to start talking about a few things, and I just want to be back on stage with amazing people in the audience who the message around worthiness and just being more of who they are speaks to them.
And it will. It certainly resonates with me. I will be there. How do people book tickets?
Box office is managed by the Bloomsbury Theatre. So just go to Bloomsbury Theatre and type in Worthy, and it will come up, or go to novareid.com/worthy, and it will take you there. I'd love to see you.
Yeah. We'll put everything in the show notes page. I could just carry on chatting to you. Honestly, there's so many more questions I have and would love to ask you, but we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I have just 5 questions in a quick fire round to finish off, if that's okay.
All right.
Are you ready? Your go-to feel-good food?
Anything Jamaican.
Give me a hint.
Specific?
Yeah, go on. What's your favourite? Sweet or savoury?
Savoury. Oh, it could be sweet though. This is not fair. This is not fair. It could be anything.
Really?
Yeah, it could be. It could be anything. It could be saltfish fritters. It could be some good mutton. It could be anything. Mac and cheese, maybe. Mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese.
Yeah.
Is there a Jamaican twist on that? What
Jamaican
do they do?
mac and cheese is not like the mac and cheese anywhere else.
Really? I'm going to need to try this. Really? Like mac and cheese is mac and cheese? No, clearly not.
Absolutely not.
Okay. This is one for me to note. Thank you. The person whose story you'd most love to tell next?
Oh. Tarana Burke.
Expand a little.
Tarana Burke founded the Me Too movement. And I just I want to hear more about what it was like to spearhead something that ended up as ginormous as that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll keep us posted if you're listening, if you're watching and you happen to know her. One thing most people seem to love these days, but you just don't get.
Oh, I don't know, I don't follow fads. I'm not doing very well with these quick fire questions. I'm like, I don't know, like some kind of trash TV.
Yeah,
maybe
like reality,
Love
Island.
I don't get
Love
never took
Island.
to that. And the Bugs one, the Celebrity Get Me Out. No, that's not entertainment for me. No, anything that makes me heave in my seat, that's not enjoyable.
Honestly, I don't understand what bugs all over the face or eating testicles.
There's no need for
does that?
There's nothing about that speaks to worthiness for me, so I'm not doing that. I have to practice worthiness, and those things are at odds for me.
Yeah, okay. So not to be approached for I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
No,
not Nova Reid.
Not a paycheck that could be big enough.
Friday night activity of choice.
Laying down, watching a film or a series like Shrinking, which I really love on Apple TV, which is about like therapists and all their weird and wacky ways, in my onesie. Rock and roll.
I love that.
And my furry slippers.
What's your onesie? Is it colourful? Is it
it's like cozy, it's just fluffy and like it's got a hood. It's just like a big warm hug. Every now and then you'll see me pop up doing lives wearing it.
Really?
Like I have no shame. Yeah, you look shocked.
Yeah, I've not seen that. I've not seen that.
Every now and then you'll see me pop up wearing it in a live. Yeah.
Final one. Complete this sentence. You are worthy of.
Everything that I didn't have and should have and more.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. Oh, what a powerful way to finish this episode. If you want to find out more about Nova, her book, her live show, anything that we've spoken about, it's going to be at the usual page, nadianagamootoo.com/podcast. All the show notes will be there under Nova's episode. I know that you have an Instagram for people to follow you. Where else? LinkedIn?
Listen, this is one thing that... let me go back and answer that question again. The thing that other people are into, and I hate social media. I hate it. If I could not be on there, I would find a way. But right now, I'm mostly on Instagram at Nova Reid Official.
Fine. Nova Reid Official. Again, we'll put it on the show notes. Thank you. Over and over again for kicking off season 7 of Why Care, for being this very special guest, for all the work that you're doing and that you continue to do, that I know that you will do until that day that you leave the world. You will continue to push forward this agenda. And I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you found it valuable and insightful. If you enjoyed the show, I'd love for you to stay connected. Make sure you follow me on YouTube so you can be the first to know when new episodes are released. You can find me by searching for Nadia Nagamootoo or just clicking the link in the show notes. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review on your podcast player. Your feedback helps me reach more people and make the show even better. It only takes a few seconds and it really means the world to me. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next time.